we've built a tool that not only does some of the marketing side about keeping the clients up to date and satisfaction checking, NPS scores, all that, but what we're really focused on is building every case, similar to what your staff does at the law firm. Our app does it automatically using reminders and tasks and tools that are built into the app. So we're helping build every case and make every client a great client.
Technically, how does it function? Do you first sign a client before you get them on Quilia?
Yeah, so we have our mission is from signature to disbursement. And so after signature, you invite them to download the app. The app goes on their phone or on a web browser if they want it. And then it's actually less crazy than you think. I mean, we got a bunch of cool AI stuff, but really we're just doing essentially time-based reminders. And if this then that statements, meaning if something's missing, plug it in. And we tailor those out at different times so that they aren't annoyed with all the stuff they have to do.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whatever time you're listening to the 10 Golden Rules of Internet Marketing for Law Firms podcast, welcome aboard. I got a great guest today, Kenny Eliason. His company, Quilia, is a legal customer communications tool. We're going to learn all about that. But first things first, Kenny's from Las Vegas, and he's been captured by the Las Vegas Golden Knights. And of course, those of you who listen to me know I'm from Winnipeg, Canada. I'm a Winnipeg Jets fan, and we've played the Knights a couple times in the playoffs. But how did like a desert family become like hockey fans and your son's playing hockey? How did that all come about?
Man, it was crazy. I don't know if y'all know the story. If you're not a hockey fan, you probably don't know the story of the Knights of how they landed in Las Vegas, but they had quite the arrival. Unfortunately, it coincided with the tragedy of the October 2020 tragedy that we had down on the Strip, which brought the whole city together. It was kind of an interesting time because the Knights had shown up 2 months before that, and they were a huge part of the healing process for the city. They dedicated a ton of their games to different people that lost their lives. They retired the number 58 jersey on like the second game of the season, which was the number of people that passed away during that tragedy. And so they showed up just at a really big inflection point for the city. And then, of course, that same season, they went on to freaking go all the way to the Stanley Cup, which just blew the roof off the city. We were freaking out. We couldn't believe this. We've never had, okay, a little bit more backstory. We've never had a professional team. I grew up here. We've never had a professional team in any sport. And so the Knights were the first ones that were in the actual professional league hockey. So we were kind of paying attention, and then they went all the way. I mean, we were hook, line, and sinker. My kids started playing hockey in the street every day. Later, playing for the Knights or for the Junior Golden Knights. We're obsessed now. We hang out all the time at the Knights.
What do you guys? I mean, I have a theory, but what do you guys think the magic was on the ice? Like, how did an expansion team go to the final?
We called it our misfits, right? They were the misfits. They were the team with an expansion team. Nobody wants to be on the expansion team. They all feel like they're like tossed aside, and so we had our misfits. Marchessault, Colzar? No, Colzar was later. Anyway, we had a handful of them that were just these ragtag guys. England, one of my favorites, still on the team as a manager now. Anyway, these guys came in with a chip on their shoulder, and they wanted to friggin' prove that they were good. And man, did they. They came out guns a-blazing and went to town. It was really cool. And I think the fact that the city really rallied behind them at the same time because we wanted them to win, it was just magic. It was magic.
So here's my theory, 2 parts. Keep it quick because I know people won't want to talk about law firms.
This is the important stuff. Let's go for the whole time on this.
But yeah. It's funny, one of the podcasts I listen to, when they get sidetracked, they say, like, this is not Golden Knights lunch.
Yeah.
So part 1, Vegas paid a ton of money, and then Seattle, like, you guys paid like $1 billion for the expansion team. And one of the things they negotiated was really favorable terms in the players they could draft in the expansion draft.
Mm-hmm.
Now, every team could protect basically their top 2 lines. But what this meant was that Vegas was able to draft the best third-line players on every team in the NHL and pick off a couple guys who, for different reasons, free agents or whatever, they could have a pretty decent first and second line. But in the NHL and in most leagues, they have a salary cap. So what ends up happening is your stars eat up a lot of the money, and most teams' third and fourth lines are not that great. But Vegas literally had the best third-line player on every team on their third and fourth line. And so what they had was unbelievable depth. Not depth like you say it on paper, like legitimate second and third line players The
Mm-hmm.
best guy, they cherry picked the best guy from every team. And same thing with the defense, and they got a little magic with Fleury and goal. So, anyways,
Little
that's my
Flurry.
theory how
Love that guy.
they
Yep.
had such a good team that it wasn't just they didn't have any superstars. Obviously, you're not going to be able to draft and develop a guy
Right.
in your first year. But what they did get was every line you played, we were playing a really good
Solid.
set of
Yeah.
guys.
It was fun, man.
Yeah, and a
That
little
first
bit of
season was
and a little
magic, and it's
magic. And I didn't recall that part, the story of the tragedy in the city. I remember now going back that
yeah,
this really rallied around the team, and
it did,
also
man.
they do a phenomenal job with the live event too, right? It's really
Oh,
fun.
we call it the best show on the strip because it is just so fun. The whole time you're there, it's just a big party. I mean, the pre-show is amazing, but during the show, it's amazing. Yeah, it's a ton of fun. They're
Yeah.
some of
And
the
how
best.
about now you have a football team? Do they do the same kind of entertainment package?
They happened to show up at a different tragedy. Their first season was during COVID, and it was not as magical. Couldn't go to the games. I'm not a big football fan because I don't have a team. Never had a team. Been here my whole life, and so I don't follow that as much. But it just hasn't picked up quite as much steam. But they do take on a bunch of the showmanship that they've done with the Knights. I think they have the same producers because
Yeah.
they do a lot of that too.
Oh, nice. Yeah, and I guess winning winning goes a long way
Winning goes a long way.
in life and sports. Anyways,
Yeah.
yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Quilia first? Then we'll talk a little bit about your journey and how the company came about.
Cool. Yeah, Quilia started a few years ago, and I can give you a little bit more of the background later, but we've built a tool that not only does some of the marketing side about keeping the clients up to date and satisfaction checking, NPS scores, all that, but what we're really focused on is building every case, similar to what your staff does at the law firm. Our app does it automatically using reminders and tasks and tools that are built into the app. So we're helping build every case and make every client a great client.
Technically, how does it function? Do you first sign a client before you get them on Quilia?
Yeah, so we have our mission is from signature to disbursement. And so after signature, you invite them to download the app. The app goes on their phone or on a web browser if they want it. And then it's actually less crazy than you think. I mean, we got a bunch of cool AI stuff, but really we're just doing essentially time-based reminders. And if this then that statements, meaning if something's missing, plug it in. And we tailor those out at different times so that they aren't annoyed with all the stuff they have to do. So like a lot of the tools out there will send you a reminder as you go through the phases, like from intake to discovery or to treatment or whatever the phases are, and those are great. But our app really fills in the in between those phases, and so we do the phase updates, but in between every other day, they're going to get a reminder that says, "Hey, come in and update us on how that appointment went, or come in and update us on how your car repairs are, or your wage loss claim, or whatever is going on," and we do that all automatically.
We hear it all the time. The number one bar complaint is my lawyer doesn't get back to me, my lawyer doesn't update me on my case. So obviously this is playing in that space where now you've got an app, you can find out updates about your case on the app. You don't have to necessarily call the firm and the lawyer not get back to you. And if you do ask a question in the app, I guess that facilitates that conversation.
Yeah, so that classic bar complaint, it's been around forever. I remember back when I worked at a law firm, it was the number one complaint back then too, 20 years ago almost now. And our old solution for that problem was client portals. Everybody's had a client portal. I've written a lot of posts about why client portals fail. And it has a lot of that, what you were talking about, where clients are trying to find out what's going on all the time. But if the client portal isn't updated regularly, then it's pretty useless. Like login, it just increases the frustration if it's not updated regularly. And so we jokingly call us the anti-portal, meaning doesn't require any additional work from a law firm. And the app is now giving them that update regularly. So now instead of them feeling like they're not communicating with the attorney enough or that the attorney's not telling them what's going on, the app really tells them what's going on all the time. Because as everybody knows that handles a personal injury case, during the treatment especially, there's not a lot going on other than going to the treatment and making sure the treatment's good. And so there's not really a lot of updates that come from the firm. But you can augment that feeling of what's going on with my case and having to get updates from the firm by just telling them, hey, I need to know what's going on with the appointments. I need to know what all those things are. And now they feel like they're way more connected and know exactly what's going on with the case. So yeah, we're really curbing that number one bar complaint.
That's perfect. You mentioned a couple other things I want to delve into a little bit.
Yeah.
The first one was NPS scores. So
Yeah.
net promoter score. Why don't I try and describe it and then you tell me?
Okay. Yeah.
Because not everybody will be familiar with the term. I guess a company net promoter score or someone came up with the concept. You might know the history, but it doesn't really matter. But the basic concept is you all get these surveys if we go to the dentist or you go to a retail store. and it says on a scale of 0 to 10, I think is the technical NPS. On a scale of 0 to 10, what's the likelihood you would recommend this company,
Mm-hmm.
this law firm or this digital marketing agency? And the logic there is that people who are 0 to 4 are in a pretty negative space. People who are 5, 6, 7 are kind of on the fence, and people who are 9 or 10 are obviously your raving fans. And there's a really significant reason why you want to know that. And so the reason that they ask the question that way is if someone's a 9 or 10, what that means in terms of retention, customer retention, which is so important. If someone's a 9 or 10, they would recommend your firm and they wouldn't take a meeting with a competitor. So that's super important and super valuable. Like for someone like us, for someone like you guys, and perhaps same for many categories of law firms, but even PI. Like if someone's super happy with their firm and they know exactly what's going on with their case and they're confident they're going to get a fair or big payout, they're not going to entertain a call from another firm. But I'm sure if they did contact a few firms before they signed with their firm, the other firms might check in with them or put them on their newsletter list. And so along the way, they could be thinking of leaving you. So for us, it's super important. Like we want our clients to be 9s or 10s. So if they go to a trade show and meet another digital marketing agency, or someone reaches out to them or sends them an audit and shows them how bad the results are, like most people do in those audits.
Yep.
And statistics you can always make statistics tell the story you want. If someone's a 9 or 10, they're not going to take that meeting. But the folks who are not, maybe they haven't been with us very long, or maybe the results haven't kicked in yet, and they will take a meeting with another firm, that immediately puts retention at risk. And same thing for the personal injury client. And then the 0s to 4, what they'll say a net promoter is that those people are either they're already looking for a replacement for the law firm or the customer satisfaction tool or the digital agency. They're looking for an alternative, or they've made their mind up. They're going to look for an alternative. So we do a customer survey every quarter. And obviously, if we get any even 3, 4s, and 5s back, I'm definitely going to have a conversation directly with the CEO. And then 5, 6, 7s also aren't great. That means they would be willing to talk to a competitor of ours. So we want everyone up in the 9s and 10s. So now translated into your tool and how NPS works.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you nailed it exactly. Like for these law firms, and in the olden days, you'd send out those big surveys and nobody would ever answer them, and so it made it seemingly like it was impossible to get good data out of people. But this NPS score comes along. It's a simple on our app. It's a 1-question slider. They slide 0 to 10 on where they're at in that question. How likely are you to refer our firm? We send those out at strategic times throughout the case. And exactly like you said, like that's the moment for you to either jump in and fix something. If it's a low score, figure out why they're dissatisfied, see if you can help them. It's probably something simple, like maybe treatment's not going the way they want and you need to follow up with them. Or those 9s and 10s where you say, hey, can I get a testimonial? Can I get a review? You jump in and help get those people to help refer more people to you. So yeah, the NPS scores, we actually just added that not too long ago. And it's been a great addition to the app, trying to encompass that whole signature to disbursement, really help the firms know exactly what's going on with the case and how the clients are feeling about how it's going. So
great. And is the tool only for PI or is it most commonly for PI?
It started in PI because that was my background, but we do have, Social Security disability, which is a kind of PI. We have family law, we have some estate law, so we have multiple areas of law too.
Great. And approximately how many firms are using the tool?
Yeah, we're approaching 50, I think. So we're working to scale up as quickly as possible. We're only been selling for a little over 6 months now, so
it's like
a good time.
Out of alpha into beta kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So that's great. Well, congratulations. I'd love to hear your founder story and start back a little bit and tell us your story and your journey and take us to the development of Quilia.
Yeah, so you and I have a touch of the same past life. I had an agency for a long time before I started this, but if you rewind even further back before that, I worked at a personal injury law firm. I got a job because I spoke Spanish and they needed somebody to talk to the Spanish clients. I had just moved back to Vegas and I didn't have anything going. Never, ever thought I'd work at a law firm. Took the job because I needed money and ended up loving the job. One of my favorite parts of the job was working with the people, and especially the Spanish clientele. It was a little bit different just because they really couldn't do it without us. There was a real need for the translation services that made it so they could accomplish the finishing a case. But even non-Spanish speakers, I mean, it's a complicated process. People don't know what's going on. I was in the boat of before that attorneys were the bad guys, but quickly realized, oh man, the insurance companies are kind of sticking it to a lot of people, and if we're not here, then they keep doing that. So anyway, I spent almost 10 years there. Went from a receptionist essentially to case manager to office manager. We did IT stuff. I was the computer guy, so I helped everybody get the computers online. And we were paper files to start. We transitioned to 2 different case management softwares before cloud existed. So that involved giant server racks and everything else. It was crazy, crazy stuff. And then eventually, after doing all that, I was talking with the attorneys and they said, hey, why don't you go to law school? It's like, man, I never, ever, ever thought I'd go to law school. My dad's a carpet layer. Like we don't professional degree around here. I had just graduated from UNLV here, and one thing led to another. I applied, I did my LSAT, got in, and I went to law school, which was a fun time. How am I doing so far? Is this
That's great. No, I love it. It's such a great story.
Well, so I thought I was going to do great in law school too. It was going to be a good time. After I can get into the weeds, which may be relevant because I did not know, like I said, nobody knew in my family how professional degrees worked, how law school worked. So I chose a school. I chose California Western down in San Diego. I went for the first year, and I was going to roll straight into the summer semester and just graduate in 2.5 years. And I got 2 months into the summer semester, and I got a phone call that said, hey, you've been excused from law school. I'm like, wait, what? So they dismissed me. Turns out I didn't know about the cut rate at law schools in order to keep bar passage rates up. Most schools cut the bottom 2%. I don't know if you've heard that. It's a really small number. Like out of 100 kids, 2 go home, and they're the kids that never came. Everybody else is still there. But at my school, I happened to choose a school that cut the bottom third because they were having a hard time keeping their bar passage rates up. So I got the boot and it's all on a curve. So it's just line them up and cut the bottom third off. So I had a high C. I had a 79% final grade and got the boot. So back to the streets with me, which is actually, I mean, the story of my life is failure. I got a bunch of cool failure stories, but that was just another stepping stone. I came home, went and worked at the law firm for a little while, didn't want to be a case manager for the rest of my life, and said, you know what, I'm also good at tech. So I went off and became a developer and built a bunch of websites and ran a marketing and development agency for a decade after that. And that's where both my worlds eventually collide, tech and law, to make what is now Quilia. So that's how we get me here.
And what was the inception? Like, what did you see that led you to create this product?
Yeah. So I spent almost a year interviewing personal injury attorneys. I knew PI really well. Like I said, I when I built those case management systems, I knew all the steps. We did all the tasks and the workflows and everything. So I knew it really well. But what I didn't know is if everybody else did it the same way I did. And so I spent a lot of time interviewing almost 100 people over the course of a year and just asking them. I called it a research project because it really was. I set it up, go in. Hey, tell me about your day. What do you listen to on the drive in? What's the first thing you do when you get to the office? What's the most important thing you do every day? And I asked these PI guys this over and over and over again, just to kind of develop patterns about their work lives. And we set out originally to build a case management tool. And I quickly, after demoing all the PI case managements out there, decided they're way too far ahead of us. It would cost a gajillion dollars and at the time to catch up. And so pivoted off that real quick. And after I was doing these interviews, 6 different ideas, I was kind of getting to the end of my rope, and I was out of my own ideas, but I was going through the motions doing these interviews. And one of the guys I was interviewing said, you know what, Kenny, let me tell you about my favorite client I've ever had. Tell me about your favorite client. And he said, oh man, this guy, he would text me before and after appointments and just let me know what was going on. I didn't ever have to tell him anything, but he just texted me all the time. And then at the end of the treatment, he showed up in my office with a spreadsheet of every visit he'd ever done, what they did at that visit, and how much they charged. And he's like, I basically printed that off and submitted it to the insurance company. It was fantastic. Like, dang, I don't remember ever having one of those clients. They're probably out there, but there's not that many. Yeah. And I said, well, tell me about your least favorite client. And he did one of those. Oh, least favorite client, man. I got a lot of least favorite clients. Let me tell you, they're the ones that call all the time or don't call ever, They disappear for weeks at a time. They don't do what the doctor wants them to do. They miss appointments, on and on and on. Like, all right, this is a problem I can relate to. And then I went back and did a bunch more interviews and I asked those two same questions. Tell me about your favorite client. Tell me about your least favorite client. And all of a sudden, we started seeing this pattern of clients. We all know them. So I said, man, what if instead of helping the attorneys with software, which was my original 6 ideas, what if instead of building them a tool, I built the clients a tool that helped the attorneys do their job better, making everything better? I mean, clients are the cases. So that's where the genesis came. We started off, we were actually called Record for a long time, and there was a lot of confusion about what that name meant. And we just recently rebranded to Quilia after a long, extensive name search. So that's our backstory.
Well, congratulations. I love it. And I hope you guys super succeed.
Yeah, thanks.
You and I both have an interesting perspective. We sort of consult with clients and we both earned a couple gray hairs. So I'm sure, and having talked to you before, you don't just drop your product in and leave. You spend a lot of time talking to these guys. So, what's a couple things that you see that law firms could be doing better?
Yeah, efficiency is a big deal. And lots of times we forget how efficient we can be just because we're used to the old ways. And with technology and everything that's changed, I mean, COVID was a big kick for efficiencies because everybody had to figure out how to use technology in their firms. That's still ongoing. And so as we come in and talk to people, we're like, we want to have our tool is an efficiency tool at the end of the day. We're making everybody's lives easier. Iron Man's my favorite superhero because he's just a normal guy that uses technology to be better. It's like, man, if we can be more efficient using technology, then everything gets better. The money saved is higher. The money made is higher. Like everything, the satisfaction is higher. And so if people would just pay attention every once in a while, maybe it's a checklist on your monthly calendar that says, hey, how can I improve efficiencies around here? I think that would make a big difference. Try to help where we can, as we're consulting these people, if we see areas they can improve, whether it's with our tool or other tools, and we try to make that known to them so they can make those jumps, make those improvements.
That's great. And how about for a very large successful firm, like a firm that's already pretty systematized, they're maybe running EOS or different operating system? What's kind of an advanced tip you would share?
An advanced tip for the large firm. The large firms that we work with, and there's a couple, they're the hardest to move. And so when you have a new process or have a new system, because it's so big and so detailed, it makes it hard to impact change. And I think at a high level, there has to be a idea of improvement that happens even at the top, and that has to trickle down throughout the team. And a leader in a firm that wants to make everything better constantly, that's always looking for a way to do something better, well, that same mentality will flow down through the ranks. And so at those bigger organizations, you can implement long lists of here's how we're going to change this system or change that system. But without that mentality shift at the top, then it makes it a little bit trickier. So having a positive attitude towards improvement and change would make a big difference in those large firms.
Fantastic. What's your why? What gets you up in the morning? What makes your day, week, or month? What makes your heart faster?
I am
aside from the Vegas Golden Knights.
Aside from the Knights, I am a big efficient. I really do revolve everything I do around becoming more efficient. And so, I'm a heavy technology user. My ultimate memory of when I learned that this was a big part about me was I was helping at the law firm. I was helping one of the attorneys, and he said, "Hey, Kenny, come in here, fix my computer for me." I was like, "Yeah, what do you need?" He said, "Okay, I got a new mouse on my keyboard, or on my mouse here, and right now, every time I want to I want to open something on my computer, I have to double click it." He said, "I want it to be a single click." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I fixed it, turned it to single click, and he goes, "Man, you just saved seconds of my life." And so ever since then, that's kind of like my running joke is like, man, I could spend 5 minutes, if I can spend 5 minutes doing something and making it a little more efficient, then that's a win. That's a net positive over the lifetime of my work. And so everything we're doing is like, how can we make that specific job a little bit easier for our clients? They'll maybe come back to us with feedback because we're new and small. We can make adjustments on the fly. So where they're like, hey, this is great, but it could be a little bit better. It's like, oh, you know what? Yes. And then my brain shifts into how can I make this more efficient for everybody, not just for this one person? And that's where our processes go into place and we make cool new tools inside of the app and everything else. So I get excited when I get to make something more efficient, especially if it's involving technology. My poor wife, everything's tech in my house and I'm always trying to make things more efficient. She's like, now how do I turn the lights on? You just say it or you just clap, whatever it might be. But yeah, efficiency. Efficiency is my goal.
Yeah. Clap and see if I can turn your lights off.
Yeah.
What are some efficiency tips, maybe for lawyers or maybe for the rest of us? What are two or three things that the common man should be doing for efficiency?
Yeah. I wouldn't say I'm a list maker, but I do either mentally or actually write down things where a lot of my ideas come while I'm driving, and so I can't do them at that moment, so I just make sure to have them jotted down or somewhere where I can refer back to them. Because when I can sit down and just plug through my list, man, I get really, really efficient. It's easier for me to stay on task. Sometimes I'll be stuck on a bigger task, like even just yesterday, I was fixing a new form on our site, and it was giving me a runaround. I'd fix one thing, and another thing would break, and I'd have to go back and forth between these things. And finally, I just stopped and was like, okay, what am I trying to accomplish with this dang form? I wrote down the list. I needed to submit. I needed to add a thing. I needed to do these 5 things. Like, all right, I'm going to focus on them one at a time. And sure enough, after I made the list, I was able to focus in and get that actually finished and brought across the finish line. So making lists is really helpful for me. I'm also always looking at new stuff. I'm a, what do they call it, super user of things. I am the guy that when I get my new phone, I click on every single setting because I want to know all of the possibilities that are there. So just knowing what I have in front of me already is a big way that I make more efficient progress.
You're the
Shortcuts
early
app.
adopter.
I'm one of those. I'm one of those olden day guys that's at the line for the iPhone outside the iPhone store for way too long.
You work out all the warts for the rest of us. Thank you.
Yeah, that's me. So
I'm an early adopter, but I don't have to be the first guy with the new iPhone. I like people like you to suffer through the few quirks for a couple months, and then they used to be a lot more. Now it seems like they go from 15 to 16 without many warts at all, right?
It's true. It's getting better. That is for sure.
That's great. We're kind of into the quick one-liners, and we kind of snuck right in there. And I've done these for years, but I don't know if you have something to add on this specific question. Are there any apps or techniques you use for personal productivity? And maybe I'll give you a technical question because you said like you write things down, and I'm literally holding up a napkin.
Yeah.
Things down for my call today.
Yeah.
And I had somewhere, and I have a book somewhere, but how do you keep that organized where all of your lists are all in one place and have the discipline to use those lists?
I have gone through a bazillion different apps on my phone to help track what it is. And you know what I always come back to at the end of the day? The simple notes app. It is just the most efficient way for me to quickly have something at my fingertips. Luckily, it syncs with all my devices too, so I can easily pull it up on anything that I'm working on, easily add to it. I don't even use the reminders app necessarily. I'll use the reminders for something if I need to time-based or location-based something. But otherwise, I just keep little notes tasks. If I went back through my notes app, I would have 1,000 different notes in there with the stuff that I need to get done. But yeah, I don't do paper much, so I don't have notepads, although that's a popular one. But I usually just pull out the phone or the computer and write it down inside the notes app. That's my go-to.
Do you have a personal wellness and fitness routine?
I do. So I started this whole company. I would not say I was the most healthy person. I was fine. I wasn't like overly unhealthy, but I didn't have a real regime at all. And part of my focus became, if I'm going to be able to do all this stuff that I need to do, work the long hours, the time traveling, do all that stuff, it's like, man, I got to make sure my health is somewhere in the middle. So I was not a morning person as a typical developer. I would be up all night deving and building stuff until the wee hours and then sleep for 4 or 5 hours and then wake up at 7 and go to work. But when I started this, I shifted, and now I go to bed at like 1 and wake up at 5:30, go to the gym. I use a workout app, but I can't remember the name of it. It's a really cool AI-based workout app that came out a couple years ago. Does some great workouts for me. I spend 30 minutes or so there. Come home, have 4 kids, so they keep me running around for the rest of the day. And then I try to eat healthy-ish. I do keto. I go on and off keto a lot. I love keto. It's been a great help for me. So I've tried to focus on the health a little bit more since we've gotten into this whole journey. Because man,
great. Well, 4 kids sounds like a fitness app in itself.
Yeah. Between hockey, soccer, volleyball, what else are they doing? Piano, all the things. It's a runaround for sure.
Yeah. Best business books.
So my favorite book, it's a little old now. I can't believe it's getting old, but it's one aside from efficiency, my second favorite thing is execution, getting stuff done. So make the list and then actually do the list. And there's a book called Execution. It's a fantastic read. It's all about just getting stuff done. I have a whole bookshelf in there of other favorites, some that come to mind. The Ultimate Sales Machine, Spin, the selling book. Those are some recent favorites because I'm not a salesman in my nature. That's a very different thing for me.
Yeah.
I can talk to people fine, but I don't like selling. So I've had to learn those things, and those have been great books.
That's the amazing thing when you start a business.
Oh,
You think you know your business, but you don't realize that you have to learn all these other things about business.
yeah, it's been a lot.
And I'm with you on
past
the
business,
sales.
I had a partner that did it, but
Yeah.
man,
I'm with you on the sales journey too.
yeah.
What blogs, podcasts, or YouTubes do you subscribe to? And when that new one hits your feed, you immediately stop everything else and go with.
Like many, and I think you and I even talked about this at some point, I am an all-in pod fan.
Yeah.
Those guys have sucked me in. That's probably the only one I'll like, oh crap, it's out, I gotta watch it, like in the moment.
Yeah, they've got a lot of vibe. Jason Calacanis and David Sachs and
Yep.
Chumeth, the all-in
Patia.
podcast.
Yeah.
I always love to tell the story because Jason says he's got the #1 podcast in the world. I think it's #1 on a business list or something.
Yeah.
I interviewed Jason Calacanis before he even had a podcast.
Hey.
That's my
blogging days.
Claim to fame.
That's awesome. That's awesome. He's a spicy character now.
The #2 podcaster in the world might be Gary Vaynerchuk. And I also interviewed Gary when he worked in his dad's wine store.
Oh, there you go.
Gary V on social media. And by the way, if you're listening to this podcast, and obviously you are, and you want to hear some of the historical ones, we go back to like 08 or 09, and there's some great, listen to the
really cool
foundation story, the OG story of Jason Calacanis or Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah, man, you've been doing this for a minute.
The founder of Pandora. There's some great ones.
Other than that, I'm a car hobbyist. I have a Jeep and work on it and do all that stuff. And so I follow like Matt's Off-Road Recovery and Fab Rats and some car guys that I keep tabs on. But those are my
how about the legal genre? What other legal podcasts do you listen to?
Legal podcasts I listen to, other than yours, of course, not too many, honestly. Bourbon of Proof, I listen to those with Bob Simon.
Yeah, we had Bob on recently. That's a great one to go back to.
Yeah, Bob's good. There's a couple more of I can't think of the names right now, but there's a couple more that I catch every once in a while.
You'll send them to me. We'll put them in the show notes.
There you go.
So last couple of questions. What's a great introduction for you guys? Like, who should be using Quilia?
Yeah, especially personal injury firms. If you're looking to improve your client experience, then this is the #1 way to get it done. It also improves the attorney's experience by way of helping the clients do everything they're supposed to do. So if you're focused on client service and client communication, then come see us.
And last one, this is really easy. Where can people get in touch with you?
I am in Las Vegas. Come see me. No, Quilia.com, Quilia.com, and available anytime you want. Phone number 702-337-3127. And I will talk nights. I will talk law. I will talk apps and tech, whatever you want.
Well, look, all the best. I mean, I hope the Golden Knights have a really, really great season up until the Western Conference Final when the Jets get their revenge from a couple years ago.
That's right.
And best of success with Quilia. And thank you very much for doing this.
Hey, thanks, Jay. Appreciate it. Good luck to you too, man.
Thank you for listening to the 10 Golden Rules of Internet Marketing for Law Firms podcast. Please send questions and comments to podcast@10goldenrules.com. That is podcast@TENgoldenrules.com.